Okay, good evening, everybody. This is the August meeting of the Chicago Computer Society Linux SIG group. Uh, Today, we're going to try and just do some articles. I'm a little light on them myself, but I also have a handout that you can download that I'll put up at the end of the meeting. So we'll start off tonight with does anybody have anything they want to share with anybody else? And this includes the last 2 months' handouts. Did anybody pick up anything out of those they want to share with everybody?
I have a real quick question for you, Tim.
Not allowed.
It's a Linux question.
That's why it's not allowed.
So the file format for the systems is ext4?
Yes.
Okay.
Now, there are some exceptions. If you're doing a Linux onto a virtual machine, they consider ext4 to be overboard, and they some will recommend ext3 or preferably even ext2, and that reduces an overhead that's not needed inside of a virtual environment. Bob Premick? You're muted, Bob.
Well, unmuted. It depends on which distro you're using. There are distros which use a more resilient file system called ButterFS.
Yes.
And Fedora and Red Hat are among the ones that do that. CentOS.
Garuda is another one.
Yeah. But X4, I have not heard any serious issues because they've kind of extended it for containers in the operating system. They've got the ability to isolate various kinds of containers. It gets a little technical from there, and I don't think we need to get into such detail, but basically, if you know what a snap is, if you know what a flatpak is, containers are really the big thing these days. And Tim, what you're talking about are full-blown virtual machines.
Well, it's even on virtual machines that I have with VirtualBox as an example. If you go into the journaling, that's what the ext4 is mostly about. The ext4 creates an overhead that reduces system performance on the virtual machine. That's why some will recommend in the virtual environment ext2 or 3. That way you end up with a slightly increased performance over an ext4.
So that question?
Not allowed.
A swap file, do you have any advantage of making it more than two times the available RAM in the swap file?
Swap file, it depends on how much memory and what CPU you have and its number of cores. Because bottom line is the 2 is for like a Windows system. And generally speaking, the swap file for Linux doesn't have the overhead Windows has, so it can be much smaller. I usually use a maximum of 3 on a low-end system, and as little as 1 to 1.5 gigabytes on more powerful systems. If you got 4 gigs, you'll and a decent processor like an i5 or i7, you can probably get away with a gig to a gig and a half, and you'll hardly touch that swap file unless you're doing heavy programs like video editing, Zoom to some extent with a browser going also. generally, I can get away with on Linux uh, up to 8 gigs, where on a Windows system, I gotta, especially with 11, I have to have 16 gigs. And there's even
Okay, so I i5,
okay, you got an i5, that's
i5
not bad.
processor, 8 gig of RAM,
How much? 8?
8 gig of RAM, i5.
I would say swap file 1 to 1.5 gigabytes is more than enough. Because everything I check on mine, which I covered back in the May or June meeting, I was showing you some of the command line tools that would show you the use of the swap file. And if I remember right, and my mind's a little rusty right now on it, I think it was on the command line free space hyphen H. And if I remember that correctly, then it should give you basically uh, 2 lines. One is your real memory, and the other one is the swap file or swap partition and its usage. Let's see if I can.
Actually, I'm in G part on the other machine that I'm setting up for the school. Because this one's got uh, a video, what's it called? Not a video port. Not the one that goes out to the multi-pin plug.
Oh,
So I'm setting up 21.8.21.2.
yeah.
But I'm in G part.
If you look at the shared screen, I'm showing you free space dash H, like I remember it. The first line under the heading line is your real memory. It says I have in this machine running Linux right now 4 gigs instead of 8 gigs. I'm using about half of it, and I have roughly 349 megs free of that space, because 569 megs is being shared with video, and a buffer of 1.4 gigs is being used with about 1 gig left over. The swap, which is set at 3 gigs on this particular machine, right now I'm using 609 megs, leaving me with 2.3 gigabytes, which means really it's oversized right now because this has an i5 7th gen processor in it and 4 gigs of memory. If I put in another 4 gigs of real memory, those numbers for the swap will drop like a rock to where used most of the time will be 0, unless I'm doing a Zoom like I am right now, have a browser running with a lot of stuff, most of it put to sleep, so that it's not causing a memory load that might require more use of the swap file. So it's a case of what are you doing and how are you doing it that counts most on a swap file. That's like if you make the simple install of Linux as one blob, just the way Microsoft Windows really is, and so is Mac OS. They're big, large blobs. If you got that, odds are you don't have a swap partition. You're using a swap file inside of that big blob, just like Windows and Mac use a swap file inside. Windows calls it a page file instead of a swap file.
Yep.
And it serves the same type of function. And there's all kinds of debate. Is a swap file better than a swap partition, and or vice versa? It's like, do you leave your system running 24/7, or do you always shut it down when you consider it at the end of the day? And there's no more consensus on that as to it's about 50-50 split between leaving it on and shutting it down. But some people don't shut down because in the early days of the machines, the switches for turning on and off the computers had a high tendency of failure, and many of these people didn't have the mechanical skills to be able to go out, buy a replacement switch, and take out the old one, put in the new one, and have their system fixed properly. There's lots of people like that nowadays with everything. So you either have some mechanical aptitude and do a lot of your own stuff that you can handle, and or you have to pay other people to do what you can't do or you don't want to learn how to do. It's one or the other. And
Okay, so Tim,
yes,
I am in parted right now on this box. I'm following the original go through, like I did on the box we're looking at.
right.
So I have a home directory and home, and what's the first one is the root.
Right.
Then a home. And now I'm putting in the swap directory.
Okay, now pause for a couple seconds here. Number one, what's the maximum capacity of the drive first?
It's a half a tera.
Woo! Okay, 500 gigs or thereabouts.
500 gig.
Now,
So I got
how big of a root?
200.
How big of a root did you make?
I made it a 200 gig root.
Wow!
It's.
I've never heard of that big of a root file.
Well, the thing is this box has got a partition in front of it, which is the boot partition, because the machine has already been done.
That's fine, but
And then there's a portion in that first drive that's yellowed out for some reason, and that's probably the part of the startup routine for the operating system.
Well, wait a minute. Let's back up here. First off,
Let me see.
Let's take.
You can actually see.
Here, yeah, but you can't really make that out from.
You can't. Okay.
Here's the thing, and it's real important. That's why I'm bringing this up here. Number one, when you first brought up G-parted on that system, were there existing partitions?
Yes.
Did you blow them away?
I shrunk one partition down.
No, I didn't ask that.
I did not blow them away
That's
fully.
Unless you're doing a dual boot operation, you blow away, even if you're doing a clean install of Windows, which I've done on some recent machines. I blow away the existing partitions on the used machine I bought, and then you start from scratch because it creates a new partition table, number one. Number two, if the machine recognizes UEFI, then you want to create a simple partition that's about 200 megabytes in size, and set it as a system EFI partition. Next, you create the root partition. The root partition, I have never gone past 40 gigabytes. Then I take whatever space is left, subtract how big of a swap partition I want from that remaining amount. If it's an SSD, I also put in about 5 gigabytes, never partitioned, left raw, and subtract that from whatever is left on that drive. Then, whatever answer I come up with after subtracting out the swap partition and on an SSD, raw area left at the end of the drive, that becomes the size of the home partition unless I want to break out other partitions in Linux, like VAR. If you're going to use virtual machines like VirtualBox, I would break out VAR folder also. Now, otherwise, everything else is the equivalent. The home directory is the C drive for all your applications you install, all your settings, and all your individual user accounts on that machine.
Okay, so I just blew away because there's no operating system on here. I'm running off of Linux.
Right.
Uh,
I've done this plenty of times.
Linux
I've done this.
USB. I'm running off of USB.
Right.
Okay, so the first partition is really small.
Yeah, you
and it's created as a primary.
now you have to start off now that you blew away all the partitions. There's a button called create. It'll create a new partition table.
Right.
Otherwise,
I'm there.
Okay. Next, you would click on the free space and create 200 megabyte partition.
Okay.
And you make that, if I remember right, FAT32. And you want to designate the boot as EFI system. But not all Linux distros do that. They don't all give you that EFI. I've got one that that was the case, and it just blew my mind that I could not set that up as a EFI partition.
Okay, so file system is
200 meg.
32.
And
the label is boot. Partition name. I can't do anything with. I have primary and extended partitions only.
Hang on. I gotta see if I can bring up mine just to take a look at what's going on here. Oh crap, I gotta sign in. Now, let's see if I can share that. And to share. Okay. Now, I'm using an M.2 NVMe drive, which may be very different than yours. I set it up.
This is spinner.
It doesn't matter. Now, see, on a spinner, you don't have to have that raw space at the end like on an SSD. Okay, just to keep that in mind. Now, if let's see, come on. Oh, wrong one. Boy, this double keyboard and double mouse drives me nuts. Let's see if I can. Okay.
Okay, mounting point is what you format, right?
Well, you don't have to format it. It doesn't care. It's a FAT32 partition. It's set up on the flags. The flags you want as a boot with ESP. Now, let me double check something here. I might be able to play a game.
Manage flags, ESP. Oh,
Yeah, I know it's unallocated. Gee, I wouldn't have guessed. Okay, now,
okay.
I can, in here, I can do the extent 4, okay? But I can do a FAT32, or I can come down in some of the versions of Linux, and I can say that this is a area for EFI. Now on this one here, it's not showing it right now because I already have an EFI partition. And so I can't show you what I'm trying to point out, unfortunately. I thought I might be able to fool it temporarily, but in some of them, they have how it's going to be on the boot up. Uh, and I have it set as boot EFI. That's what I selected mine as. And it's a FAT32 system. And some of them have also boot flags for a whole lot of other things that can be activated in some Linux distros. This is one of the confusing areas. If you've got a machine that's too old, it doesn't know what EFI is. So you don't even have to set up the partition. I've got some old machines. It wouldn't even recognize the EFI partition. Okay. So I wouldn't even have partition 1 here even set up on the machine. This machine is in the category that it recognized EFI. Then I set up my root partition, extent 4, mount as root, which is the slash. I set it up originally for 40 gigabytes, and I only used so far 14 plus gigabytes, leaving me a whopping 23 gigabytes to add binaries of installed programs. That leaves the third partition, extent 4, mounted as slash home, and it's 192 gigabytes. And right now I'm using a whopping 6 gigabytes, leaving me a hell of a lot of space left. Now, on this particular machine, let's say I wanted to install VirtualBox to run Windows operating system on this machine, a Linux box, run Windows. I could install it, but there I would take part of this home partition away from home, make a fourth partition, and mount it to the slash VAR, because that's where VirtualBox stores itself, and on a Linux box. And I do have on another machine that exact kind of logic. And then I would have had a fifth one for the swap partition. Now this one here, I thought it was going to need the 3, but even with 4 gigs of memory, I'm using next to nothing. I'm running a browser. I've got gparted running right now. I've got the command line and Zoom running, and I'm still probably sitting real pretty with a lot of space left.
Okay, so Tim, I'm looking at yours. Your second line down is the P2 format X4, and you got the slash, you got your mount point. You get the mount point when you format?
No,
Because I'm not seeing it in the new G parted. It does not give me an option to where I mount it to.
yes, it's not showing you that, and I'm sorry about that, but hang loose for a minute. So I'm going to cancel what I'm showing right now. Oh, you're not even seeing this one. For some reason, usually a shared screen, when you bring up another one, it shows you the damn content. But after I've done that, I can manage flags by right-clicking on any partition. So if I go to the first one, go to Manage Flags, I can say it's a boot and it's an ESP. That's the closest you come to a EFI designation. Okay?
So my managed flags does on the second one.
Okay.
So I got the boot one. I managed flags. I got boot and ESP on there.
Well,
when I click on the second one, which I've checked on,
click Manage Flags, and
it's grayed out.
Well, wait a minute now. These managed flags here are, how do I want to put it? The managed flags is for special stuff, not normal. For example, on a real old system that doesn't know UEFI, you might create a BIOS grub partition, and it will put grub in that partition and boot from that. And it's hard when you've got a system already set up and running. It's hard to show you some of the stuff that you're asking questions on. Not that you're wrong by any means, but
okay,
now,
so you don't have a flag, but your mount point on that your screen
hang on a minute.
has the backslash for root. That's what I'm. I don't have.
Now,
So
okay,
I click on the second one.
Hang loose for a minute. I got an SSD here, so I took the unallocated space at the end, and I set it up for just under 5 gigabytes. Now, I can make it a primary because I set the partition up as GPT instead of MBR. I can put in a partition label. I've got it as an extent of 4, and I don't know if I can get away with this, but I'm gonna try it. Yeah, stop sharing, but I gotta see what it did. Okay. Now, I created an extent 4 partition here, and if I go in, I can do format as to whether I want to format it or not. So since it's new, it should be formatted to the ext partition. And I think if I remember right, I gotta.
I've got the format. I just don't have the.
I know the designation mount point, but I can't remember how to do it. And I don't think it's done here. That's the problem.
Okay, that's what I was asking.
Well,
is it done in a step?
It's a case. It's a case where what you're attempting to do is pre-partition. The problem that occurs is that gparted doesn't do all the settings you want. It's when you install, you designate root, home, var, or other partition types. That's where
Okay,
it's at.
that's
And that's why you have to, when you're installing, select other options rather than use the whole drive, erase what's there and use it all. Uh, Things like that. You always click on other, and then you can go to each of the partitions you created, and you can set things like root, home, var, if you did the boot ESP, that should already be set up. It's a confusing little mess. You can do all the partitioning you wanted to do during the install under other. I'm not joking when I say that. You don't have to do it with gparted like you're trying to do right now. That just gets you your partitions. The bad part, it doesn't designate what each partition really is until you get into the install. And then you say, for this partition, it's the root. This partition's slash home. This one is for slash var. That's when you get into the real designation. And when you actually commit to the install, it knows what each partition is and puts the proper stuff in the proper partition.
okay. So that stuff is added during the install and not gparted.
Right.
Okay,
Only,
that's my down to it. Brass tacks. That was the question.
yeah, I forgot about parts of that because lately I've been when I set up new ones like the machine that I have the Linux running on, I set it up during the install process under other. I said create a new partition table. I said take and allocate this much space for the EFI, so much for the root, so much for the home. If I set up var, I set up for that, and a swap partition, and I don't use the gparted to do it. It has its good points and it has its bad points. Doing it with a gparted first to create the raw partitioning, but in the installation, that's where you designate what each partition really is going to be, so it puts the right content. But if you want to, you can do it all from within the installation, but its equivalent of gparted is just called parted, and it's a more primitive tool than gparted is. So there's trade-offs. Gparted is easier for setting up the partitions, and parted inside of the installation is more primitive, but you can achieve the same thing and designate at the same time what its function is of that partition.
Okay, so I just got an error message. Not able to do more than four.
Okay, you set
Primary.
up. Okay, you didn't recreate the partition table as a GPT. Under regular, normal, old system style MBR, you can only have 4 partitions, and usually it lets you create 3 partitions that are primary, and the 4th one it wants to set up as a logical partition, and you can make as many logical partitions as you want. But if you're only going to create 4 partitions, you can change it from logical to primary, but 4 is it, period. You want more than 4, you have to have the gparted that Windows 8 introduced. So you have GPT partitioning, you can have as many primary partitions as you want, but you can also have logical partitions if you desire. So right now, you're stuck with saying I got an MBR instead of a GPT partition table set up. This is another problem trying to use gparted. Sometimes gparted doesn't give you the ability to create a GPT partition table. Have we lost the rest of you guys? I can't help it.
What you're doing, finding it interesting. There's many ways of doing it.
Oh yes, there are umpteen ways, but anything with a computer has umpteen ways. There is no single only way of doing something on any computer I've ever touched. It's just not real. Bob?
Yeah, the multi-partition way that Tim is showing is actually considered to be more stable. And if you have to reinstall, you can save your user data because you've saved your home partition. All you're going to reformat is going to be your root partition.
Right.
And is equally with the var being broken out. If anything crashes with a virtual machine, all you do is just reconstruct var. You do not have to reconstruct the whole operating system.
Right. And it's really on var, as long as you don't reformat it, it'll keep it as is.
Oops. Yeah.
So you have lots of issues. That's what may confuse a lot of people, especially newbies. I understand it. I don't have good ways of explaining some of it because bottom line is there are too many ways of getting the same thing accomplished. And if you listen to all the ways that are possible of getting a Linux system set up with multi-partitions to make upgrades and reinstalls when you crap out the system, much easier without having to reinstall absolutely everything, you now have a headache because there's umpteen ways of getting it all done, and usually you'll only hear one way from somebody. I try and be open-minded enough. I've tried many different ways, and they all have their pluses and minuses. But if you don't do something, when are you? Is what it amounts to. Some people might say that some people who are on the fence not doing anything is because they don't want to go out of their comfort zone. Well, I'm sorry, but a lot of things in life require you to get outside your comfort zone and take a gamble. That's why I bring up alternative ways of setting up a Linux system without disturbing your production system, such as an external USB drive that, and when I say that, I'm not talking a thumb drive, I'm talking a actual SSD drive inside of a housing or with an external USB adapter for that SSD. And you can even do it with a spinning hard drive with either the housing or the separate USB adapter and still get the same thing accomplished. But you got to get out your comfort zone and understand if you're a newbie in particular, like Dennis is.
And like I am the Linux.
Well, you're ahead of Dennis, Peter, by a long shot. So bottom line is, Dennis has to get out of his comfort zone. That means you have maybe a queasy stomach. You're kind of nervous about what you're doing. That's called the learning experience. You're going to screw up many, many a time. If you're concerned seriously,
I screwed up three times so far.
well, that's a learning experience. Now, here's the thing. Bottom line is, for like Dennis, if you're concerned on a production system that you don't want to damage your existing drive, which probably has Windows on it, you have to open up the box with the whole system turned off, disconnect the SATA cable from that drive, and then you can either leave the side of the computer off or put it back on. Plug in the SATA or spinning hard, the SSD or spinning hard drive via USB into the front end. Plug in your flash drive that's got your Linux distro on it. When you power it up, the only operating system it's going to find is on that flash drive, and it'll load it up, and you'll eventually see it. When it comes to installing, there's only one other drive besides the flash drive, the USB SSD or HDD drive. That's it. Because your internal one, you took out the SATA cable, there's no way it can be touched. When you get done creating your Linux successfully, now you can shut down the machine, go back inside, plug in the SATA cable to that Windows drive, button it back up, and you got Windows back again, as long as you don't have that Linux drive plugged into the USB port. That depends now on a BIOS setting. Many BIOS, like Dennis has a Dell Optiplex 3050. You can change the boot sequence so that USB is first. If you've got an optical drive, that can be second, and your internal drive third. That way, when you plug in the USB Linux drive and boot up your system, it's going to go to the USB drive first, and if it can find a bootable OS, it boots that up. If that's Linux, it's Linux. But usually it won't do it if on that USB drive you have Windows installed. That's one of the big differences. Windows doesn't like to run through the USB port. And you got to remember, since USB 3, which isn't too bad, prior to that was USB 1, 1.1, and USB 2. Those are too slow to run an installed version through USB to begin with. And they just didn't change that when USB 3 came out. But I still, on a spinning hard drive, I wouldn't want to do it off of USB anyhow. An SSD, yeah, that could be workable. But you'll pay still a penalty because it's a little slower than having that drive inside as an internal drive. But anyway, I digress a little bit there. It's just a case where you have to understand, especially as a newbie, you're going to make mistakes because there is no perfect person that has ever been created. Unless you are a Christian and you believe Jesus as the Son of God, maybe he's as close to perfect as you can get, but he still died on the cross because he was a human. Other than that, humans are all flawed. All the code we are currently using is made by humans, and the humans make mistakes. That's program bugs, security vulnerabilities, though there are some developers, whether it's a big company or a small one, they don't concern themselves with security vulnerabilities. They just want to create the product, and it's up to you to figure out how to keep your system secure. Adobe had that label for a long, long time. I don't know if they've improved that at all, but being in the cloud mostly right now, I assume that has improved quite a bit since they moved to the cloud. So you have to take everything with a grain of salt. You got humans that are imperfect. That means right now you got to have the balls enough to be able to say, okay, if I'm really concerned about messing up my current system, just disconnect the SATA cable from the internal drive in that machine. It can't be touched. Then you set up everything via USB external drive, and that's all there is that can be changed. You screw it up like Peter is trying to set up a drive right now. He's on his third iteration. Hey, you might go through a dozen. So what? It's a learning process.
Time. It's just time.
You were not given, when you were born and you got to the age of 5, somebody didn't give you a pill that gave you all the knowledge you have accumulated so far in your life. It would be nice. It would be a terrific thing if we could take a pill and that was the case. We know everything we already know.
Yeah, but you would only know what was knowable then, not what's knowable now.
Then you have to learn. But at least you would start off with a high base, not a low base, gradually building up. You would start off at a plateau and work your way up. It's like you're supposed to be around 5,000 feet up the side of the mountain.
No, I'm only 1,500
All right,
feet.
1,500 feet.
The whole island is only 8.
And but you've got room to go all the way to the pinnacle.
If it gets too hot down here, I can go up and get cold.
That's right. That's what I'm getting at.
If it's
and
too cold where I'm at, I can go down.
Going from where you're at up means that you've learned more. If you go to lower ones, that means that you got dementia or Alzheimer's. Put that one.
Okay, so another Linux question.
Not a lot.
After you formatted, can you create an extended partition in disks?
Wait a minute.
So I've got four primary partitions, and I still have some space at the end.
That's what I'm getting at. If you are still set up as MBR, you ain't going to use the rest of that disk. Period.
Okay.
Even if you had a 4 terabyte drive or an 8 terabyte drive, it wouldn't matter. Whatever you set up the partitions to consume right now, that's it. If you got MBR, you got to change it to GPT. Gparted can do that for you.
Okay, so that means I need to click on the first.
On the Gparted, there's an option under partitions to convert your MBR to GPT. Period. Now you can make as many other partitions as your little heart desires. I think up to 254 or 255. I don't think it goes beyond
I don't have that partition.
Mine sure as hell has. Hang on a minute. I gotta look it up again. I've done it before. Oh, I gotta keep doing this. Oh, let's see here. Okay.
Oh.
Under device, you've got create partition table. That's where it's created. But if you've got blank space and you haven't created more than one partition, usually you can get an option under the partition to convert to from MBR partition to a GPT, because I've used gparted for that purpose in the past.
So currently, I have an MS-DOS.
Right. MBR. Master
That's what
boot record. 4 partitions, normally
Oh,
3
okay.
primary, and the
What
4th
would I?
it wants extended, but you can turn that to primary, but you can't do anything else with any remaining space.
Okay, so considering I haven't gone through the trouble of, so what do I have to? What do I change that?
You do a view, I mean under device, create partition table. That's why I was saying you got to do a create partition table, and tell
So I
it.
haven't dropped down list.
And see, it's right now telling me if I create a partition, 4 partitions currently in existence will become non-existent.
Yeah, it says it'll erase the entire disk.
That's right. That's why you got to do.
Okay, so I don't have a problem with that because I'm so short into the build process.
You have to understand when you are dealing with. I set up Linuxes with 4 partitions, so I don't care if it's MBR or GPT. Period. But when I know I'm going to set up,
GPT is the one that I change it to.
That's right, because if you want more than 4 partitions, you have to use your head ahead of time. Then you got to create a new partition table to GPT, and you can go to 254 or 5 partitions.
So it just erased everything. That's good.
That's expected because it tells you that's what it's going to do.
Right.
Now, if since you've created a partition table as GPT, if you want to create 5, 6, 7, 8, all the way to 254 or 255, I don't remember which it is, you can do that whether it's from in GPT or during the install process with the parted that's inside the Linux distro under other category for installation. That's where you can set up the individual partitions also and designate what each one of the partitions is going to be.
And the first one's a FAT32?
Yeah, FAT32 is the standard for EFI partitions, and you don't have to set it to format.
I'm not.
Yeah,
I don't have
for some
to
reason the process that uses that partition for UEFI does its own thing. It knows it's supposed to be FAT32. It automatically formats it, wiping out anything that's in there, and then it puts in the UEFI partition information. That's a standard that Microsoft set up with setting up the GPT partitioning. Even on Windows, some doing a clean install, creating a new partition table, will set up 2 or 3 partitions. Some of them will set up 5 or 6. It seems to be a roll of the dice, either caused by the machine's manufacturer via the BIOS, or it's the way Windows perceives that system as to how many partitions it creates. But you can always add more partitions if you want to, if there's empty space. But GPT is the modern way of going. If you got any old systems that don't know what UEFI is, you can set it up as MBR as long as you don't exceed 4 partitions. But it won't recognize GPT on that ancient system. So you can't set that up. So you usually you take the 3 primary in an MBR format, you leave everything else as extended, and create everything else in the extended partition, separate partitions for however many you want. It's a pain in the butt, but it gets the job done. Now, does anybody else have anything to share with us from their experiences on Linux, and or from the articles I did in the last 2 meetings? Well, don't everybody pipe in at the same time. I can't make out what you're saying. Well, while Peter's playing again,
I'm redoing the drive again.
this is
The third time
this is one of my new machines. And this is
Let me see the back of that again.
Pardon?
Let me see the back of that again. Does it have two outputs for video?
I got 3 on this one, and they're all display.
Oh, okay.
So I've got a one of these display ports here is a converter to DVI, which I'm using on the monitor. Anyway, this is about 7-inch square, 1.5 to 1.75 inches thick. I have this one that I showed you is an HP. This does not handle Windows 11. It'll handle 10 or Linux, and I got it explicitly for Linux. I got a cheapy one that does not have a CPU, doesn't come with memory, doesn't come with storage drive, and does not have a power supply. I had the last 3 items. I had my own memory, I had the storage device, I had a power supply, and the only thing I had to buy extra was a CPU for it. And I got a i5. I could use a 6th generation or a 7th generation CPU in the machine. And then I just installed Linux from scratch and built up what it has on it right now. I also have sitting below it a Dell Optiplex 360. The same size machine, but Dennis has a 50, 40, 30, 20, 10 cannot support Windows 11. Only 10 and Linux. The 60 series, 70, 80, 90 series handle Windows 11. I got that one. It came with a low-end CPU. It came with a SATA M.2 drive. I replaced it with an NVMe that I had. And it didn't have a power supply. I had my own. And I installed Windows 11 on it from scratch and have built it up since then. But I can't show you it because right now I had to steal all the connections for the machine that's running the Linux. So the only thing left in the 3060 is a power adapter, and that's it. So there's no connections of any kind. Right now, those are some of my latest machines. I have 3 computers currently running 11 supported. These small 7x7 machines are either nicknamed tiny, mini, uh, micro, MFF, or USFF. Those are the designations. I also have a machine that's by HP like this. It's both of these are HP Elite Desk 800s, but the machine I showed you is a G3, third generation. You have to have fourth generation to support 11 or higher. The other machine I got is a G4 SFF. That means it's about half the width of a normal tower machine. And it runs 11 just fine right off an M.2 drive. Right below it is a machine I built myself. It's got an i7 8th gen. It runs 11. I have another machine. It's currently got 10. I'm trying to save my pennies for another CPU to upgrade it first. Then I'll convert it to 11 from 10. And so I got 2 years to go on the getting that CPU chip and getting it converted in time. On that machine, it has a 9th gen i5, and I can probably put that in my Dell Optiplex 3060 machine and replace the low-end processor that's in it. This is the Dell Optiplex 3060 machine. There are a couple things I like about each of the two machines for different reasons. First off, the Optiplex does not come with USB-C, at least as high as Gen 4. USB-C is something that most people are looking for these days. The HP that I showed you first comes with a USB-C port only in the front. I think it's still 5 gigahertz, so that's 3.1 level. Not the newer 3.2 Gen 2, which is 10 gigabits. The Optiplex, the HP 800 Gen 4 SFF machine has also a USB-C on the front, but I haven't checked in the specs as to whether that's USB 3.1 or if it's 3.2 Gen 2, the higher speed. The one I built has USB-C on the back, not the front, and that is a 3.2 Gen 2 at 10 gigahertz. Also, the machine I will convert when I get a new CPU has a USB-C on the back that's 3.2 Gen 2. And then there's the new USB 4, but you got to get newer machines. Gen 4 machines, if you want to go to 11, are mostly under $400. And that's sometimes with 11 already and everything you need to run. Though I might want to change the processor because most of the processors end with the letter T, and that's a low power processor that reduces your high end frequencies. I prefer a CPU that doesn't have a T at the end. or an F even as far as that goes, which is fixed frequency. But generally speaking, these are great little machines for general purpose computing. They also make Elite Disk, pardon me, Elite Disk 705 series, but that's AMD, and you got a real gotcha there because there's at least 4 or 5 generations. There's the old A series that are 2-core processors. They're not worth messing with unless you're only doing Linux and a low-end distribution. If you get a series processor, 8, 10, or 12 that has the PRO after it, you got a 4-core that might be decent. If you get a series 8, 10, 12, and the last character is an E, that's an enhanced version that has 4 cores. Anything that's a 4 or a 6, you probably want to avoid because unless you look it up and it says it's got 4 cores, 2 cores, unless you're running a light Linux distro, isn't worth it these days, especially for if you're running Windows. It'll be real slow, or you will be limited on how much you can do at one time. Of course, memory is also a big factor. But generally speaking, there's also a 600 and a 400 series. The newer machines, like a G5, have 9th gen, and the prices start going up. They go as high that I've seen so far as the 12th gen. And you could be spending up to $3,000 for a 12th gen machine. But it'll probably come with a warranty. These machines come with no more than 30 days from the seller, and no more than that. These machines are different. These are business class machines. They are not consumer class machines. As such, they if they run Windows 10 or 11, a license is already built into a chip on the motherboard for a pro version, not the home version of Windows. So all you got to do is download free from Microsoft the Windows operating system of choice, put it on a USB flash drive, plug it in, and you can load up Windows 10 or 11 and be automatically licensed with a supported version. And business class machines have a higher reliability than the consumer grade will ever have. The average life of a consumer grade machine is 5 years. And not that many exceed 5 years unless you're well adept at both upgrading the machines and maintaining the machines and knowing how to fix them yourself versus paying somebody else to do it. In which case, you might also go out and buy a new machine.
Okay, Tim?
No, he's not here. He left.
Bob?
Which one? We got 2 Bobs here.
We'll go. Okay, you are here because I can hear you.
There are 2 Bobs here.
Tim. I'm here. Okay. So I'm doing installation, and it's in the basically the format screen. And the device bootloader, is that going to be the FAT32 tape?
Wait a minute.
I'm in the Linux install now.
Are you under other where you can create your own partitions?
Yes.
Okay.
I've gone through putting the language and all of that in. I haven't connected to my network.
Well, if it shows on that screen that 200 megabyte partition is boot and ESP, you're already set. The second partition should be designated as root. The third partition as home. And if you created an additional partition other than swap, that would be next. And then the last partition would be your swap partition.
Okay, so what it's showing is free space and then a fat 32 partition with no mount point.
Well, wait a minute. The free space, is that like a 1 megabyte?
That's like a 1 megabyte.
That's called partition alignment, and there's nothing you can do about that.
I understand that. I don't have a problem with
And it's really not a partition, it's raw space.
Okay, whatever. So I got the fat 32, so do I connect, hit that, and then
Mount point is EFI system.
Okay, device with bootloader installation. That's the hard drive. Correct?
Well, I'm assuming you got a spinning hard drive. That's what you said earlier.
Yeah.
You've
So
got
that's
one.
what I-
You've
what-
got
what-
one partition established, a FAT32 for EFI.
Right. It doesn't show at this point is
It should give you either boot flags or under mount points. Mount point, you drop down and select EFI system, or you have to right click on the partition you created, go to the manage flags, and put a check mark in boot and a check mark in ESP.
okay. So here we go. EFI partition or
Yeah, EFI system, I think it's called.
EFI system partition.
That's right.
Okay.
Now it knows exactly what it's going to do with that when you get to the install part of the whole setup. Now you take free space and do another created partition for the root partition, no bigger than 40 gigabytes, and take and say the mount point is / which is root. And you can designate that partition
Slow down.
for formatting. Usually it's a checkbox after you created the partition. You put a check mark that says format that partition.
Okay. Let me do this. So I've got the table. So I've got EFI, which is fairly big.
How's fairly big if it's only 200 megabytes?
It's 2,000 megabytes. I've got a lot more space than I need on this damn thing.
That may be the case, but EFI, I've never seen anybody or Microsoft create over 500 megabyte. It's only supposed to
It's
be
showing 30 megabytes used.
Pardon?
It is showing 33 megabytes is used.
Yeah, like I said, it's going to be next to absolutely nothing.
So I'm not going to bother. Don't keep it to sizes.
You're out of your tree.
This is not a production machine other than to go over to school.
Yeah, but
So
it's a lot of wasted space. You could use for 2,000 bytes. You could set up EFI at 500 and a swap partition for 1.5 gigabytes in that space.
I've got enough room in the swap partition already on your standard. So don't This isn't going to see 10 years of files.
The EFI partition never grows beyond 500. Period. No ifs, no ands, no buts. So anything beyond 500 is never going to be touched with a 10-foot pole.
And if you hear this, do it on yours. Okay, so now what I want to do is what's going to be the home. So EFI is the boot. The root is going to be the next EX.
Yeah,
ES4.
You would create a new on the by right clicking the free space.
The free space has got 0 meg. No, I've got it partition. It went through G-parted.
Okay. Then
Okay,
go
so
to the what you're going to call the root. Right click on that, and you should be able to designate the mount point as / which is root.
So that's a change.
Yeah, you have to change.
Use as
Mount point.
reserve bias, EFI, physical volume, encryption spot, journaling file system.
Well, it would be extent 4.
Okay.
And then mount points
Format.
below that.
Format. And that's boot. It's slash boot, right?
Yeah, just the /. That's root.
Oh, just the slash. Okay.
That's usually the first entry on mount point. Is just a plain /. It doesn't say root. But that's / means root. Then you go to the next partition after you save that information, and that one you do extent 4 format, and mount point is /home.
Okay, so wait a second here. Okay. EFI. Partition, that's okay. No. Okay. Right. Next one. Home.
/home.
Yeah, it says flag. Okay.
They all say /, but it means it's coming off the root, making a direct.
I understand file system a little bit.
All right, and then go to
last one is
probably your swap
area.
Pardon?
It just says edit partition is a swap area.
Okay. Yeah, instead of extent 4, you say it's swap Linux swap. And that's it. There's nothing else to do with it. It leaves it raw.
Correct. And now I can hit install.
Yeah, and you'll probably still get a message about GPT. I haven't understood why. If you got it set up as a GPT, it sometimes wants to do that. Then it gives you a box. Yeah, and
partitions are going to be formatted.
If they're designated formatted. You can, if you were recovering, you could say not to format home and other partitions, just the root would be formatted.
Okay, so let's continue. And now it wants not Tahiti, not Pickering.
It's got to have your time zone, and it's got to have your login credentials and password.
Honolulu. You can continue with the meeting. I can hear you.
Oh, you're going to let us go ahead. Okay. Anybody got anything
I'll
else?
break in again.
Yeah, well, we can ignore you again. Offhand.
Hey, I'm giving you the meeting tonight.
Yeah, I know. Ha 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 ha. Anyway, does anybody else have anything else at the moment, or I will go into the articles that I've got for tonight, as far as we can go. Wow, we're already at 8:30. We ain't going to get too much in the way done, so I'll probably have to go through stuff real fast. But you'll get a handout so you can tinker with that. Share screen. Okay. Wow, we're down to 79 with a dew point of 73. Holy mackerel. X out of that. I found out that I got a weather station reporting site like 2 blocks from my house. I don't want that one. Okay. All right, first article I got up here. Now this is kind of high level. This is called WireGuard, and it can create VPN client or VPN server. I'm assuming most people will do a VPN client, but there's a gotcha. You still have to pay a VPN service provider that will support WireGuard their monthly fee, which is usually collected 1, 2, 3 years at one time. The more years you sign up for, the cheaper they give it to you on a per month basis. But WireGuard will give you the ability to take and set up under Linux, Mac, and Windows, as well as iOS and Android, a VPN to an existing VPN service. You gotta be kidding. Bob, what the heck did you do? I don't know if I should let him back in or not. What the heck did you do, Bob? Anyway, WireGuard works on all the platforms. It's cross-platform, it's open source, and creates a secure VPN to whatever a VPN service provider you contract with. If you're more venturous, or you are out of your home a lot and you want to access your running systems you left at home, you can set up a WireGuard VPN server in your home and have access to your home network from outside, say at McDonald's or Starbucks or whatever place you want to be at, or even from a relative or best friend's home using their internet service provider. You can go from your device with a WireGuard client go all the way to your VPN server where you live, and any machines you have on, you can SSH into and be able to see and use in a remote desktop environment. So if anybody wants to look at this, and you click down here to see the whole content of the article. Moving on because of time, we have 12 things easier to do in the Linux command line. Take it with a grain of salt, folks. Now I've got too many things here. Come on. Oops, I got wrong. No, I got the right on the wrong screen. So I got to move that so I can get to this. God dang it. I want you off of my system. What the heck is going on? Dang it. Oh, you are really going to irk me. I don't want this at all. Finally. Holy mackerel.
I gotta go get some.
Okay. Come on.
Come on.
All right. Got rid of. Oh, now complaining about the other one. Security is a pain in the butt. Anyway, it doesn't show all the graphics on my system, but that may be something to do with me. But it gives you 12 different things you could do. Opening up a terminal, how to open it quickly and easily, quickly check system performance, kill any program, kill all. I wouldn't recommend it, but if you want to try it, go ahead. Check disk usage, check the weather. You can get into many other tools here. There's 12 of them listed. Next is 4 ways to shorten Linux commands to save time. And this one here says replace an absolute pass with relative pass. This is akin to old MS-DOS days and early Windows days where you would set up path extensions in the auto-exec bat file. And that's really what you're doing. You also have command line aliases. So basically, you set up an alias with a full long command name, and you use an abbreviated value that's what you type in, and it says, oh, I know what that is. That's an alias. And then it goes to the alias listing and executes the real full command. You have autocomplete feature for the shell and scripting. Scripting is the advanced version of old batch files in Windows. Pardon me. 10 basic Linux command for beginners. So Peter, you and Dennis in particular should consider some of these. You got the command line display contents of a file with the cat command. You've got action file types with memo open. You got change mod, which is the equivalent of Windows file attributes, but this one may give it to you in what's called octet settings. What does that mean? You are used to the decimal system 0 through 9. Octal is 0 through 7. So they have owner with 0 to 7. They have group 0 to 7, and other category, which I usually ignore. One of these days I got to get into deeper. That's 0 to 7, and it gives you things like read only the file content, write the content, or execute the content of any given file. Then you have the grep utility. This is a powerful little tool, quite often used with the pipe symbol, which is usually above the enter key on the one that has the backslash. When you hold down the shift button, you get the pipe command, and it's a long vertical bar. Then you have the diff command for differences between two files to give you what changes took place between file A and file B. You have IP address information. NetStat, very powerful tool. You can turn off your networking system, make some changes like resetting it, and then turn your network services back on. Ping, this tests out, are you getting out on the internet? So you might say ping www.microsoft.com as an example. And that's just as an example. And you have to understand the normal Linux command will keep pinging from now until the end of time unless you also designate a C value, which is a count. So you might have a -C4. That means it'll do 4 pings and stop. If you don't put in the C parameter, it's going to keep pinging until you do a control C to cancel the command. You also have detect hardware details with the LSHW command. Trace route. This is what you use to find out where is the internet taking you node by node from your place to the destination online account. And it will give you how many hops that it took to get from your place to wherever you're going to online and how long it took. And then you have world differences. I didn't bother to get into that, and we don't have a lot of time left. 39 essential Linux apps. You may find many of interest. It usually gives you 2 or 3 different applications per genre categories. So you have image editors, audio editors, email clients, personal communications, systems recording and streaming tools, system organizers, task managers, apps for games, media player, media server software, video editors, open source media converters, backup tools, PDF editing tools, and some of these are not free. Some of them that they recommend cost money. But it gives you some other genres that you can look into. Now, here's one, if he's still here. I think Earl dropped out. Okay. Earl is on the KDE environment. Marble is a alternative to Google Earth. It is created by KDE, so if you're not using KDE, you can still install it, but it's going to bring a lot of components from the KDE environment needed to support this program application called Marble. And it gives you a world view of things that you can drill down to, even the moon, if you're planning a trip there, etc. It's cross-platform because it's run through the browser. So it gives you a lot of possibilities. We have here 5 Chrome screen recorders. I'm not going to get into real depth there, but if you want to record Zoom meetings, etc., you might consider one of these screen recorders. You have a 5-game for learning Linux command line. These, through a game, just like a solitaire on Windows, you learn how to use a mouse for people that didn't know what the hell a mouse was. And these are 5 games to help people learn how to use the command line and do things. I don't know if all these are free or if some of them cost money. I'll let you play with that stuff and find out. Become a Linux power user with 8 tricks. These are learning how to use the more advanced features like pipes, wildcards, output redirection, command history, these special characters and what they do on the command line. Run a command from background, a conditional execution, like if, then, or else type operations. Top 12 must-have apps for Debian users. Well, let's assume none of you have Debian. You have Ubuntu, or you have Mint, or you have MX, or Robo Linux, and many other distros. They're all based on Debian. Therefore, these programs usually work just as well in whatever distro you have that's based on Debian, which Ubuntu, Mint, MX, Robo Linux are all part of one family. So these 12 apps might be worth it. VLC, I can tell you right off the bat, is one of them. Mozilla Thunderbird for email desktop client versus email through a browser. So you have that. You have GIMP, which is likened to Adobe Photoshop, just a little bit more primitive, but it has a lot of the same capabilities. LibreOffice, some of you may be using that like I do. You can even take MS Skype, which may be ending near of life. I might add from Microsoft. Microsoft creates Skype. They may be ending that product in the not too distant future because of some things they are coming up with that involve AI. Visual Studio Code, that's for programmers to put in code, etc. There's other things here, so you have to look through the list. How to list install packages on Linux. Especially newbies, you may not know how to install. This gives you a ability to create a list of your installed packages on Linux. So you can create your own kind of a directory list of what you have on your system. And you can do the traditional packages. You can do on Ubuntu, Fedora, Arch. You can list flat packs, snap packs, I don't think it handles app image. Uh, why check the installed packages and applications? I don't know. You get what you can out of it. How to switch between Linux distros without losing your data. Your data is in your home directory and possibly other subdirectories that you've set up, like VAR. So this tells you how you can use a partition editor and make up preparations to be able to install a completely different distro without losing your home directory and other directories, not directories, partitions, home partition and other partitions you set up like VAR or others. You can keep all those partitions and just install the new uh, operating system of Linux. Then you have how to set up a private VPN with a product called Turnkey. I'll let you get into that if you're interested in a VPN. How to choose a VPN. 10 things to consider. And this is not a joke. You need to go through this article before you get a VPN because they're even comparing free VPNs versus paid. Free ones are very limited on how much you can do per month on a free. They are logging everything you are doing and they will sell that information to whoever wants to pay for it. That's why you usually don't use free VPNs. There's one or two exceptions. Location, jurisdiction. If you came from, say, the Middle East and you want to talk to family back in the Middle East, you definitely want to use a VPN within the country, but more importantly, you want to have end-to-end encryption so that nobody, not even the government in that country, can tap into your connection with who you're connecting to. You eliminate with end-to-end encryption any man in the middle eavesdropping upon you. So that's other considerations. You have should you use a VPN from Consumer Reports and why you should use it and when you should use it. So I'll let you go through that. We have VPN evolution. 10 ways VPNs have become even more private. This is where some of them may get into end-to-end encryption so that not only your ISP doesn't know what you're doing, but when it goes out into the wild internet, all the way to your connection point, like with a Zoom or other video conferencing program, you get end-to-end encryption. Even the governments can't tap into what you're saying and doing. All they can do is block the connection in total. And they can do that. So you got to be a little crafty in doing stuff like that. Chromebooks, spiritual successor to netbooks. Netbooks was Microsoft's idea for a low-end competitor to Chromebooks, and they were called netbooks. The problem is you couldn't upgrade them from one version of the Windows operating system to the next without wiping out and doing a clean install of the new version of Windows and then putting back the programs you were able to install in what little space is left and any data files that you had that still fit in the amount of space. You may not be able to do monthly updates. because you may not have enough space on those old netbooks. Those old netbooks are good for installing Linux on them. And also Chromebooks that no longer get Chrome OS updates can be converted to a Linux. I've done it. Bob Premick has done at least one system. 6 reasons why Chromebooks should be your next computer. There's a lot of seniors in CCS and a lot of other groups. They're not using regular Windows or Mac OS like they used to, and many of them could change to a Chromebook with a relative ease and not even miss having a Windows or a Mac OS on a regular computer. 28 the best Chromebook tips and tricks for beginners in case you want to check out a Chromebook. The key to Chromebooks is knowing when this particular machine was manufactured, because Chrome OS is only available for the first 5 to 6 years, no more than 7 years, and then they stop giving you updates. And the only thing you can do with it is keep running the last version you got, which is not as secure, or you convert it to run a Linux distro. How would you fix a hacked home device? Here's what you do. I'll let you read that one. It's not for the faint of heart, but it's information you need to know if you got hacked. How to tell if your Wi-Fi has been hacked. Another one here. This is a real interesting one. What is an evil twin attack, and how to protect yourself from an evil attack? This gets into people who take their devices to McDonald's, Starbucks, and other places using the public Wi-Fi available free in those places. And they damn well better be using a VPN, because here's the other problem. Somebody else can be in that place with a portable device. They've changed the name of their tethered Wi-Fi to mimic McDonald's, Starbucks, or whatever that place is using, so that it looks almost the same, hoping that some idiot will not recognize the difference and attached to their device's tethered Wi-Fi. And everything you do, if you don't have a VPN running, they can see everywhere you go, everything you do, and they will record it and eventually either sell it or use it against you. It's a man-in-the-middle type attack on free Wi-Fi when you're traveling outside the home. How to stop your neighbors from stealing your Wi-Fi. How to is your network secure? 5 ways to check your internet connection for being highly secure. We have here how to secure your home Wi-Fi network. What's the difference between service and system control? This gets into your Linux operating systems. Some using System D use system control versus service. You got to know what the difference between it is and how to use the right one on your distro. Differences between them again. You have another one here. Difference between system control and services, to try and explain some of these things that you may really need at some point in time running Linux. Manage your system startup and boot processes. This is like what we need to do on Windows and Mac OSs. Uh, well, here's the information how to deal with controlling what is in the startup and boot processes on a Linux system. They're using an app called Upstart. I'll let you read into it yourself as to whether you can understand what they're doing and how you can control what starts on your system and what does not when you're booting up. Most things on Windows and Mac OS, if you say stop it on boot up, it's your boot up process goes faster. And the application still works in Windows and Mac OS when you want it to run. But I won't guarantee that at the moment on Linux. There are some things you might be able to stop that won't be available to you without manual starting. Bob Premick?
Upstart is no longer part of Linux. That article is from 2011. System V has not been used since System D was introduced.
All right.
There are some Linuxes that do use it still, but they are very, very few.
Okay, that's good information. I hadn't gotten to reading all the details. How to run Android apps on Linux. There's another one. How to use ATOP to further analyze system load on Linux. And there's a couple of these. Monitor your resources and processes using ATOP. How to clear a RAM memory cache, buffer, and swap. Usually this is not needed, but there may be instances where you're running into problem and you may need to clear out one or more of these areas to get rid of something that is causing your system to have problems. So you'll have to read through it. And there's several other ones, but it's already at 9 o'clock. So I'm going to stop that part here. And I'm going to stop a share if I can get back to it. And I'm
Tim,
going
do you remember that conversation we had about hardware?
Yes.
And wireless cards?
Yeah.
Well, I ordered from Amazon what were supposed to be three identical wireless dongles to the one that I actually got working. And I'm trying it on a new machine, and it did not seem to work. So I went inside and I got the old one that I know works, and put it in this machine, and it popped up correctly.
What the heck happened there?
And yet they're supposed to be the same dongle from the same manufacturer.
Well, I'll tell you, Wi-Fi dongles with Linux can be problematical because a lot of dongles are actually Windows only or Mac only.
Well, these were supposed to be
just a minute. And those that may work with Linux, it varies from distribution to distribution. What ones will work and what won't. I go back to my days with Raspberry Pi because that's Linux. I'm not joking when I say that.
I understand that. The thing is, this one is particularly advertised as being good with Linux 21.2 Mint.
Yeah, well, a lot of them say that. It doesn't always turn out to be factual. You could have a configuration problem, though, that you're running into.
The thing is, though, I put the other one off the other one I had that didn't have wireless in it, and plugged it into this box, and it fired up and works well.
Well, like I
And
said,
I only see that because in the model number down at the bottom, this is UNV2 and the other one's a V1.
like I said,
So you have to be really careful with hardware.
no
So there's
kidding.
three go back to
No kidding.
two.
And especially when it comes to dongles, that's why I use the internal cards to machines. I replace them, and I know I've got a working system. Dongles are very problematical, and I go back to 2012 when I started playing with Raspberry Pis.
You'll run into the Raspberry Pi too.
You'll run into the same problem.
Yeah.
Tim, if you were trying to post the meeting document, you did not yet succeed.
I know that. I'm trying to get the darn thing to work, but right at the moment, it's giving me something I don't want that usually gets flushed down the toilet.
Yeah. Something did get posted to chat, but it wasn't the document.
It's giving me the path to where the document is, not the actual document, and I haven't figured out what the heck this thing is doing and why.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to open it. And this is on a Linux box, so at the moment, that's where the problem is at. So cancel that.
Oh boy, there's only about 30,000 updates on this one.
Well, what do you want? I'm gonna.
But I got one fully installed with the G-parted stuff. This is for Dennis's thing during the period of a meeting. So Dennis, for you, I would recommend that you go back to the Linux site and order or download a new version of the Linux 21.2 ISO.
I concur with that.
Get on it.
If you're just starting out, always get the latest, greatest version. If you've got an existing one, you have to evaluate. Is the new changes to the new version have anything of real value or interest to me? If the answer is no, why bother doing it?
Absolutely, but this one works with the hardware way better. It's got a couple of nice updates. So you're doing a new install, it's got a better chance of getting everything clean.
Just to clarify, Pete, 21.2 of what? G-parted or mint or what?
No, not G-parted. You don't need to have G-parted.
This is 21.2 of what?
Linux Mint.
Mint? Okay.
In other words, a new version came out.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, and
It's got G-parted built in, so you don't have to worry about that whole thing.
Yeah. It's also got a nicer installer. Yeah, and it's called Victoria 21.2.
Okay, now on chat, I have successfully gotten the damn file.
There we go.
Click on that, and it'll download it to your system. You probably want to put it in the documents folder.
Well, it comes down to downloads, but I'll get it.
Yeah, well, it puts it in your home directory.
Yeah.
If you didn't change the directory to docs, it puts it in the home directory, and until you get used to that little quirk, you're looking all over the place. Where did it put it? And you look in home and you find it. Then you start screaming at the machine because you're so upset why it put it there.
Found it.
That's what I'm getting at. It's a tricky little beast, and there's lots to learn because it's different than Windows or Mac. You have to accept it. If you don't want to move up to Windows 11, well, I take that back. I'll stop at that. At the end of Windows 10 life, you either run it like your Dennis, your wife's church-based laptop running Windows 8 still, and so that's a high security risk. If you don't care, it's going to be your problem when something bad happens. Uh, with Windows 11, I am running on a machine right now, talking to you on this, that I sent that file in the chat on. It's Windows 11 unsupported. What does that mean? If you got a problem, it's your problem. Microsoft will not talk to you or help you out, but it's doable on a system, but it's very DIY. Do it yourself, and you got to maintain it yourself. And there's lots of quirks to that. But if you want a supported Windows 11, you got to have the right hardware in the first place. And then if you got a problem, you can talk to Microsoft and get some help besides other users who have 11. Other than that, unless you got big bucks for Apple's hardware and run the Apple OS, which is only supported 5 or 6 years on a version versus Windows, which is 10 years on a version, like Windows 10. It's in its 8th year, and it only will last until the fall of 2025, which is 2 years from now, roughly, or 25 months. And generally speaking, that's end of life, and you are no longer supported. You only get a security update when they happen to have bad security issues. They will issue once or twice a given year a security update if you check for updates. Otherwise, you get nothing every month in the way of updates. Uh, with Mac, you don't even get that option. When you are at end of life, the version you are on, the last version, is all you will ever have. You don't get any updates. You can't upgrade to a new version of any kind whatsoever. I've got 2 old Macs that are in that condition. And so I speak from live experience. And the hardware for Apple is 2 to 3 times the amount for a Windows-based PC, usually. But it's very high quality. It doesn't mean that it won't have hardware issues the same as a Windows system, but it's a less likely occurrence. I've been inside of mine, and very high quality engineering and components on it. So that leaves you only one other area, and that is Linux operating system if you want to use regular computing. Some people get away with just using a smartphone. Some people can't figure out how to use a smartphone, so they have a dumb cell phone. Some people use a tablet. And sometimes they run into problems because most of the people on Zoom don't have a tablet like they have, and things look differently, are located in a tablet sometimes differently than on a laptop or desktop type computer. That makes a big difference. So now how do you help the 1 or 2 people that show up on a tablet that have a problem? Chromebooks are closer to a regular Windows style laptop and an Apple Mac computer in the functionality when you're using something like Zoom or Microsoft Office now works on a Chromebook. If you got a modern Chromebook, odds are if it's up to date with the latest version of Chrome OS, which I think is 116, but I'm not positive of that. You can probably now install Windows Microsoft Office on that computer, which means it's run in the cloud and it works. So you can get Microsoft Office 365, a subscription base, on Windows, Mac OS, and Linux, and Chromebooks. They're going, everybody's going cross-platform as much as possible. Yes, Peter.
I'm having trouble downloading that file.
Why?
I don't know.
Neither do I. I can't see your screen. All you do is click on. You see where the little green dot with a check mark in the chat box?
I don't have a green dot with a check mark. I've got the down, the W. I've got three things on the side. I got the three more, and it says download.
Well, you got a.
Are you in chat?
Yes.
Do you see the W, which is the Word document, the RTF document?
Yes.
Does it have a blue dot on it? Or a blue arrow?
Down arrow.
Yeah. That's
Click
it.
that. Click that.
If you don't change the directory before you click on save, it's going to put it in your root home directory of.
Or it'll put it in a directory called Zoom.
Yeah, it'll do it that too. So it'll put it, and you got to find where it's at. So the best thing before you hit save is to change the directory that you want to put it in, like documents, and then click save.
For some reason, mine ended up in my Mint downloads directory. I may have changed that.
Wow.
No.
Mint downloads.
That's where I want it.
It ended up in your downloads?
Yes.
Yeah. Apparently Zoom.
Mine.
I have Zoom dot 10. Dot 7 was the previous version. Let me get the details of which Zoom I've got.
And I just recently upgraded too, so that may have something to do with it.
Yeah, they may have made a change.
Yeah, you never know when a change is going to pop up and it changes where it does things or how it does things.
The interface definitely has had some changes.
Oh yeah, they've added lots of features. They're in competition with Microsoft and everybody else under the sun, and they want to stay ahead of the game to keep as many of the people using Zoom versus going to Teams or Google Meet or some other similar product.
Yeah, 5.15.10 in my Mint downloads to the download folder. The download directory.
Like I said, you got to hunt for it because it doesn't always go where you want it to go.
Well, it used to go to Zoom. Then it went to just your home directory.
Yeah, that's what I'm getting.
And now they've changed it again.
God almighty. But anyway, you get the drift. Hopefully, all of you got the document. You can peruse through the articles. This is a source of questions and or things that you've tried out, and letting everybody else know what you've tried out and your experience with trying it out. You either had a lot of difficulty or you had good success, and how you like the product, etc., whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Same for June and July's list as well. There's lots of good meat on the bone, but you have to take the time to go through the articles and see what's what. That includes me as well, because most of the time I'm putting these things together faster than I can actually read the stuff myself. And I have to go back after the fashion to the things that interest me to figure out what the article is about, and at the same time, too, how to do it myself. I didn't catch that startup process.
That turned out to be an article from 2011.
2011.
Well, I missed that offhand.
You must have
You must
misread
have
it as
misread it as
2021.
2021.
Probably did. Uh,
But anyway, as soon as I saw
Art
Art
Start
and
and
CCMP,
I was like,
no, that
no,
was
that was
probably about
a
a decade or
two
two ago.
ago.
yeah, the bad part about it is a nice topic. I would like something modern alongside of that to where I can control things that start up in the boot process that don't interfere with the running of the system or that application later on once I'm up and running.
Yeah, the problem is
System
System D
D
took the startup
processes
and
and
unified them into just a very few threads.
threads.
And this makes for much faster startups and much more stable startups. But it does tend to increase the amount of code that's used, and it also has the effect that you don't have granular control over processes at boot.
Well, also having fewer threads means that if you got multi cores, let alone hyper threading on your cores, it slows down the boot process. And from my standpoint, Mint has got a big issue with the boot up process and how long it takes.
Mint is different from Ubuntu in several regards. It's actually the user interface that's taking so long to fire up. Cinnamon. Cinnamon relies on the old Xorg
Okay.
protocol, whereas the way Ubuntu boots up is more efficient and faster. By the way, the Ubuntu I use is not the default Ubuntu. I use it with Unity,
Yeah.
which is now a different flavor. But that's pretty fast too, although not as fast as the default GNOME. So
Well,
yeah.
It,
Interesting things have happened to me, but they're not things that are at the level of this group.
But it also shows you too that computers and all the software, whether it's an operating system or application, are constantly evolving, changing, dropping stuff that seems to be of little interest to some people, or will not work in the changes of the new environment, and so on and so forth. It's a moving target. And you have to be open minded, you have to be adaptable to live in the current environment on computers. There's no way around it. So, Dennis, for you, the key is getting off the dime and overcoming your fear of screwing up. You are going to screw up. That's a guarantee. That's it's impossible to get around that. It's part of the learning process. The thing is, if you want to protect whatever operating system you have on that Optiplex 3050, open it up, disconnect the SATA cable, which is the smaller of the two cables from that internal drive, and nothing will disturb that. When you want to go back to Windows, you take off the USB Linux drive, you connect that SATA cable back onto that internal drive, and it'll boot up just like normal, which I assume is Windows. And it just works. And you can leave it that way as long as you are not going to be installing another Linux. If you've got your Linux working on that USB setup, you just plug it in when you want to. And if you've got the boot sequence changed in the BIOS, it will boot off the Linux drive over the internal drive. If you don't, you have to learn what key brings up the boot menu, which I think is F12. And as you are starting up the system, you have to tap F12, and eventually you get the boot menu, and you say, instead of booting to the internal drive, I want you to boot to this USB drive. USB or legacy is long, I mean, UEFI or legacy. Usually you want to select UEFI Linux drive, and it will boot up into Linux. So you either change the boot sequence in the BIOS, and or you change the you have to bring up the boot menu to boot to the Linux drive if you have the internal drive hooked up. But during this learning phase of trying to put the Linux on to a external USB drive, it's best to disconnect that internal Windows drive because it can get messed up during the experimentation until you successfully set up the drive. And you should be looking at the drive, even for Peter, realistically, as a learning drive system, something that you use for a year or two to learn how to use the Linux operating system and experiment with all different kinds of things. And if you screw it up and you don't have a backup, then you disconnect that internal SATA drive cable again and reinstall Linux from scratch. That's okay. After you get a year or two real live experience with Linux, you'll be in a better position to be able to install it with the Windows drive still connected up without messing it up. But until you get to that level, it's best to have it disconnected until you get a running version of Linux. Then you can reconnect it and run the Linux when you want to, run Windows when you want to. I do it all the time. It's quite doable. And the funny thing is, with my systems right now, I have the next level up. You got the 3050, I got the 3060. I can run and have installed 11. But I can plug in any of my USB distro drives, boot the computer off of one of those drives, and run a completely different Linux version than what's installed on it. And as an example, I think I have one of Unity, but I have a Ubuntu Cinnamon version, which is a Cinnamon desktop like Mint. It's different. You can tell the difference between the looks alone. And I can run that version of Linux on any of these two small machines and see it on my monitor. And I use a KVM. I actually have two KVMs because I got two monitors, two keyboards, two mice, and at least two or more machines per monitor, keyboard, mouse. So right now, on one, I got two machines running, one running 10, one running unsupported 11, and that's on one monitor with a keyboard and mouse. On the other monitor, keyboard, mouse, I currently have a Optiplex 3010 running a Linux operating system. It happens to be a version of Mint with VirtualBox running on it. So I have a /var partition, and then I have this HP Elite Desk 800 G3 running Linux Mint installed on it, and it's version 21.2. And I can reboot it plugging in one of my USB drives I use on the 3010 computer and boot off of it instead of what's inside of that machine. And I'm sharing the monitor. I can't switch back and forth on it because I'm using digital interface on the monitor with this Elite 800 G3 and the Optiplex 360, whereas the 3010 and 3020 next to it, I'm using VGA, which is an analog interface. You can do 2 analogs, or you can do 2 DVI if you got the right KVM, or you can do a KVM that handles HDMI to a monitor that can handle it. There's probably KVMs now for USB-C interface for the monitor. It's your choice, but you can't mix 2 different versions of video connection on the same monitor. One will override the other. A digital interface overrides an analog interface. So if I hit the button right now to switch to the Mint that's on the 3010, you will get nothing happening because it's an analog interface. The digital on this other machine is overriding the analog signal and says, I've got total control. So that's one of the little gotchas that occur. But this is, to me, a piece of cake. The route that I'm trying to steer you, Dennis, on is to give you multi-boot capability without dual boot. Dual boot means that you are using one drive that's built into the machine, usually with Windows. It could also be an Apple product with Mac OS. And you are have a segment of the drive sectioned out as a partition for a Linux operating system. But anytime you do an upgrade of the primary operating system, Windows or Mac OS, your Linux operating system disappears. Now you got to have special tools and knowledge to be able to revive your Linux operating system to get the grub menu reinstalled so you can now see and select when you want to boot up to Linux and when you want to boot up to Windows or Mac OS. It can be a little bit of a nightmare, but what can I tell you? Anybody got any last comments? Because we're already at
Simple question.
Not allowed. You've
Simple.
already had too many.
What's the program to run Windows apps on Linux?
Oh, you're looking for Wine, but Wine itself is hell to configure. What you want on Linux is something like Bottles, or you get a different distribution And when you're installing, you select wine and advanced setup configuration, and it will run many applications, but not all. Even bottles will not run everything because it's really a graphical, simple interface over wine, but you have to have wine along with bottles. Wine is a command line program. That's what makes it a nightmare for most people who don't want to know command line at all. But that's the problem with I've got some other utilities. They're command line only, and I'm waiting for somebody to create what's called a GUI, graphical user interface wrapper, that runs that command line program in a graphical environment. That's what you usually see on Windows of software that was developed on a Linux system. It has a graphical user interface wrapped around the command line that you never see in Windows. You just see the graphical interface. You think it's like a Windows program, but it does not modify the registry like real Windows programs do. And if you say delete this or uninstall this program, there's no registry to clean up. You just wipe the damn thing out and it's gone. BleachBit is a BleachBit is a Linux utility for cleanup. That's a little a utility, works on Windows, and it does a great job. It finds stuff. I usually use anywhere between 3 and 5 other programs to find stuff on Windows to clean out dead wood, and yet BleachBit will come along and find additional stuff. But all you see is the graphical interface. You don't see the command line.
So I had a problem with one of my programs that writes an IDE. It's an IDE, and it writes a program to a board, a programming board. And the USB would not write.
Yeah, I wouldn't guarantee that Wine will support that either.
No, the thing is, I managed to after about 4 or 5 hours of slogging through everything, I managed to find a command line that enabled the Linux machine to actually write that code.
Okay.
So I found the solution. I just don't have it over in the car.
That's fine.
I just want to let it takes
you brought up about
so that there's a lot of background work that you have to do if you're doing something special.
Yes, but also you brought up about running a Windows program, and that's using Wine, and they've improved it dramatically over about 2 decades of time Wine has existed. And so bottom line is it keeps getting better and better, handling more and more programs, but it has 3 categories. Those Windows programs that seem to work just like they were running on Windows, those that run for the most part, but not everything works, that did run on Windows. And the third category is forget it. It ain't going to run, at least not in the current iteration of Wine. Some future version of Wine, maybe.
Yeah, it's because there's a couple of programs that I'd like to have on this, So I don't have to walk in and out constantly to
Well, that's
house,
usually
and I have two machines.
well. See, that's where virtual machines come in. What is considered a better practice than using the wine with or without bottles or other front ends like bottles is to put on virtual box on the Linux machine, but you want to have a separate var partition before you ever do anything. And it's best to set it up when you're installing, okay? And then because VirtualBox will put itself in the var folder of Linux, which is in your root. And virtual machines take up lots and lots of space. That's why it's best to create a separate partition for var so that you can have quite a number of virtual machines. One of them could be Windows itself. You could put Windows 10 in, and anything that runs on Windows 10 will run there. But when you are running Windows, and you can do Mac OS also, but for Windows, you will be nagged to activate the Windows with a valid license key in the virtual environment. Otherwise, you cannot make changes in the personalization setting of the system. It blocks you from doing it until you activate. But everything else will work, and you'll have a watermark of activate Windows.
Okay. So for next time, maybe you could go into creating a second user for the box.
Well, you can do that anytime you want to, Ned. You go into users from your start menu, Ned, to set up a new user. I don't remember the exact terminology.
Any gotchas?
You go under administration, and on my Mint, it says the last entry under administration is users and groups. That's where you set it up. You can set up your own groups to say that certain people that are logged in can do certain things because they belong to an individual group, like admin, or in the case of Linux, root. Anybody who has root access can do things that a non-root user can do.
Yeah, that's the area where I had to use the command line because it needed to be in a specific group.
Well, you would have
Folder had to be in a group to actually write the code.
Well, that could be, and there are certain things. See, normally only the initial user that you set up when you did that install has the ability to do root commands with sudo. But other user accounts you set up usually do not have that access unless you add them to groups that do have the ability to use sudo commands to do the advanced administrator functions. It's a safety item. They're considering most users only need to do run standard applications. They don't need administrative rights to do advanced things.
So it's sort of like in Windows, the Active Directory on the commercial level.
You got it. And it's actually not an active on Windows. It's the administrator account versus a standard user account.
Okay.
And you have the same thing on Mac OS as well.
Yeah.
All of them work that way. You're supposed to do your normal work in the standard account for security purposes, and only the people with the right knowledge and skill have access to administrative rights to be able to do advanced things. And they take responsibility if they hose the system.
Yeah. Too well aware of that.
And on Linux, you can wipe the whole drive absolutely clean and nothing left. That's why you got to be real careful who's got root privileges. Anybody got anything else offhand? Well, we lost Bob Baxter and Earl, I know, out of the group. I don't remember when those two dropped out.
Bob Baxter
Bob
had
Baxter
another
had
meeting
another meeting
at
at
9.
9.
Okay. Well, I can't do anything about that. I don't know.
Dennis, did do any help for you?
Pardon?
I'm talking to Dennis. Wondering if this gave him any insights.
It's a hard question to answer. Certainly it helps to know from you that there's a later version, and you don't need to have the separate
Oh,
that's helpful to know.
yeah, but I mean, see, when we first started out with even you in there, we were on version 20. Then it went to 20.1, 20.2, 20.3. Then it went to 21, 21.1, and now it's at 21.2. You can upgrade, just like in Windows, from all those versions, but it's unnecessary if you're just starting out. If you're starting out, you get the latest version first and then put it on the drive, the flash drive, and will boot up your computer off of that flash drive. But like I said, if you're worried about if that 3050 runs Windows, just disconnect the SATA cable from the internal drive. You can't screw that up. All you have to do later on is reconnect that one SATA cable into the drive again. It only goes one way. There only one way to mount those drive cables, and they have a specific notch. And hang on a minute.
Dennis, while he's getting something. The USB boot from 22 from 21.2. If you boot from it, you can actually run Linux off that boot without actually installing it.
Oh, really?
I brought that up before, and the only thing is, if you want to go to the internet, every time you run it off the flash drive, you got to set up your Wi-Fi. If you use Ethernet, it's not a problem. How does that one grab you?
The thing is, in order to do that, you have to be able to boot from your flash drive,
Right.
USB.
And you either use on an Optiplex F12 key to get the boot menu, or you go into the BIOS and change the boot sequence. This here, ignore the color. This is a SATA cable, and the other is a power cable, and I can't show you one of those offhand, but it's wider. This is very narrow, so a cable like this with lots of wires going to it is the power cable, and then this smaller one is a SATA cable. When you pull that off, nothing can write to that drive. So there's no way playing with Linux you can screw that drive up. When you want to boot off of that drive, you connect this cable back on, and there's only one way it will plug on.
I think the problem is you're afraid of messing up your system, Dennis.
Well, here's a question you have. Huh?
One of
If you're afraid of messing up your current system, change the boot order to go to USB first and BIOS.
And that's
Plug in this disk.
Dennis, do you
And
know
just
how to
run
do the
off,
BIOS
turn it
change?
back on.
Wait a minute.
yeah.
Peter. Dennis, do you know how to go into the BIOS, and do you know how to change the boot sequence?
That's my number one issue and problem, and let me explain that. My machine, I believe, has this secure boot as well as UEFI.
That's okay. Mint knows how to deal with it.
And I've never felt comfortable. I mean, Tim's always talked about, don't be afraid to play with the system. You just do it, start over again. My biggest fear has been because this thing has a secure boot and a UEFI boot, and that if I don't do that right and then try to install Linux, and that something will go wrong that will later on not let me even be able to install Linux, because they'll say, oh, well, you had secure boot, you should have done it this way.
Okay, Dennis, I'll give you the short answer.
You should have done it this way.
Garage sale and pick up. Go to a garage sale and pick up an old machine.
Yeah.
Don't even use your current machine because you got so many worries about it.
Well, here's the other thing.
For $10 or $15, you probably get one.
Right. And it's not a bad idea. I've brought it up before, but not everybody catches it. But here's the thing, Dennis. You don't have to worry about changing the BIOS. All you have to do is know that on that machine, after you disconnect the internal drive's SATA cable, you're going to use the F12 key to bring up the boot menu. And you're going to tell it what device to boot to, which should only be that Linux flash drive. And it will boot to it. And you can run Linux right from there as a training area.
The way Pete described.
Right. And then you can attach this SSD or spinning hard drive either with a external housing, or an adapter like this, where you just attach the drive here and plug the USB into the port. That's the only other drive that would be recognized if you do an install from the flash drive, because the other one was disconnected by you.
Yeah. Well, the other thing was, I don't know how many months back, 6, 7 months back, Tim, you had mentioned buying a few of these things from Micro Center.
Right.
So I went out and I got this. Where now? Canvio ready.
Okay, that's a backup drive.
Thing, and I got this.
That's the hard disk enclosure for either an HDD or an SDD.
Yeah, because you had suggested that, and then I got whatever this is. This is the
SSD. Yeah, it's an inland SSD. Okay,
So you suggested an approach of using these things to be able to run it off the side.
Right.
And then we had previously, many months back, last year, talked about just converting the whole system over to a, forgetting about Windows. Blow Windows away entirely. Just turn it over to a Linux system. And so in other words, At the beginning of this meeting, Tim was talking about and was having a discussion with someone else here about how there's so many different ways you can do something.
That's right.
And the thing that's hit me now is I've been hit with so many different approaches that it's like really, whoa, it just kind of pushed
Well,
up for a minute. I said, what the hell? Which one should I do? What should I do?
Well,
It's kind of
you just have to select one. But here's the thing. Let's take that 3050 internal drive. Odds are it's a spinning hard drive, not an SSD.
Correct.
Okay. Now, here's the funny part, or the laughable part.
And I don't mind blowing it away completely.
But here's the thing. You can leave that because it's probably got 10 on it, and keep using that until the end of life. But it's either a 3.5-inch drive or a 2.5-inch laptop drive, the same as that inland drive. Same size, okay? Now, if it's a 3.5-inch, you might need a mount. It's an aluminum plate that's got a couple bends in it, and you mount the SSD, that 2.5-inch, onto it, and it fits inside of your bay where the 3.5-inch drive is at now. And you can take that 3.5-inch drive out or leave it in and use it as general data storage. The thing is, the SSD and that housing that you got for it, you put the SSD in there, that gives you the USB connectivity for that SSD now to install Linux on it and run from that when you want to. And when you take that out, it will boot to the internal Windows system. Now you have both worlds depending on what you boot the device to. The BIOS change can come later. It's not draconian, but it's hard to show and explain because there's no way of showing it easily on a Zoom conference. The reason is you have to have it on a separate screen, and you have to worry about the camera glare of the screen fading out what you saw originally when I started up the Linux. So it's a half a dozen one or another, but also the BIOS from my 30, 10, and 20 is now slightly different than what's on your 3050 and my 3060. My 3060's like your 3050, and they made some subtle changes. And that makes it even harder to explain because if you go back to the beginning, what I did on the 3010 isn't completely the same as on your 3050 or my 3060. It's very similar, but different.
So if I'm understanding from what you're saying and what Pete was saying, that with these things, I can temporarily tell my 3050, even though I'm not changing the BIOS, I can temporarily tell it when it comes up by pressing a key, F12 or something. Oh, don't boot from the hard disk, boot from the
USB device.
The USB device, and like Pete said, and then just run Linux from that. And I think that's a good startup approach. That's probably what I would want to try to do then. That's probably the best
now,
thing.
see, the thing is, the first drive that you brought up, that's for backing up your existing internal drive, and you can also use it to back up images of a Linux installation. But it's a backup drive. You don't run the OS from it. You could, don't get me wrong. You could actually do it, but I don't recommend it. It was obtained to store backup images, so if you really hose things up, you can restore the backup image and be back in business in a short period of time.
So I would actually be running the Linux system that you talked about, Pete, from just none of these components I showed here, but just from a regular flash drive.
No, that's initially. You can run it from there, but it's the install media to set up your other stuff. You would take that SSD from Inland and you put it in the housing. And when you got it in the housing, it plugs into a USB port. Now you can say when you're booted off the flash drive, there's an icon on the desktop of install flash drives that says install. And you double click that and it says, I'm going to start the install process. You plug in that housing with the SSD into the other USB drive before you hit the install, and it will then recognize that drive, and you then have to select during the process that you don't want to install to the flash drive because that would wipe out the installation media. You want to install to this blank SSD drive. And everything of the Linux operating system gets transferred and set up on the SSD. Then you keep the flash drive as a backup to be able to reinstall that at any point in time. From then on, all you install is the USB housing with the SSD in it with Linux already installed. As you boot up, you hit the F12 key until the boot menu comes up, select the USB drive, and it runs. And at that time, you can have the internal drive in the computer hooked up. And if you don't select F12, it will automatically boot to Windows on that internal drive until you change the BIOS boot sequence. And that's for later.
Dennis, do an
That's the way
experiment.
that I learned to having an external drive like that.
Yeah.
Good way to go, and set up rooms actually, add things, configuration, and everything. The flash drive don't have much room with it. So it's a good way to go.
Dennis,
Here's
do
an external drive just like you've got. It's got an SSD in it. There's the USB connector. I have changed the BIOS, but if I didn't change the BIOS on a machine, I hit the F12 key on some machines, not all machines. And I can get the boot menu. On some machines, you use the escape key. Some machines, you use F9. Some you use the delete key still. But in either case, once I got the boot menu up, I select the USB drive. And whatever's on it, if this is a bootable operating system, it boots up and runs my Linux. This one happens to be Ubuntu Cinnamon desktop. But I have another one here that's already running. It's hooked up to the machine. It's running Mint 21.1 off of a drive just like that. And if I want to, with one of these adapters, I can take this drive just like the Inland drive, hook it up to here, plug the USB port in, bring up the boot menu, and I can boot a live operating system off of it, or I can install to this device.
Dennis,
Yes, sir.
do one experiment. Not doing anything, just take the bootable Linux USB with the machine off, put it in a USB port, and turn on the machine.
It won't boot up. It'll go to the internal because he doesn't know how to change the BIOS.
No. Sometimes they left with the USB first.
Very seldom. Usually,
Very
it's,
seldom, but it's a long shot.
with
5 minutes.
the way Windows works, I guarantee you, it always wants to go to the internal first, and it will go to the USB next, and then the CD drive, if you got one. That's the way it's standard on Windows, period, whether you like it or not.
Okay, it's 10 o'clock. I'm on overload, so I got
Have a good evening, Dennis.
Yeah, we got to break this up, but hopefully you're getting something out of it. With Peter being a pest, taking 3/4 of the time, and regular time, and Dennis for about another hour.
The more we learn, the more we're going to take up the regular time.
The more you learn, the more you're going to mess up until you figure out the mistakes you're making and stop doing them.
I understand that. I'm
And
a
the more
novel
you
learner.
learn,
Actually, I'm not a book reader learner.
So
I've got to have my hands in this thing to learn.
well,
And
most
I've
people,
got
most
it a
people do.
dozen times.
Most people do have to because you're not going to learn it from the videos, from any documents. You only use them as a starting point to give you enough knowledge to try and do things. But if you don't try, you don't learn.
Yeah, and sometimes you go to the videos and that to try to refresh your memory from what you've already forgotten.
That's right. But that's normal. Same with articles. A lot of times,
Especially at our ages.
a lot of things you forget until you read a new article or an old article. And a lot of old articles are as good today as they were when they were originally published. Okay, we got to put this puppy to an end.
And sometimes you need to take those articles with a grain of salt.
Ha 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 ha. All right, let's put this baby to bed.